me. I am Tim Delesio. I am the CTO at Techolution. So quickly, just a little bit about me. I've been doing e-commerce for about 20 plus years now. I spent 15 of my years, my career, working for Hertz Rent-A-Car. I took, when I first started there, they were doing about $10 million a year in sales. And by the time I left, they were doing about $5 billion a year in sales. So we definitely had a significant load going through there. And I really understand, all the challenges with doing that. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about us, about Techolution. I'm going to tell you a little bit some of the market challenges that everyone I'm sure is aware of. I'm going to try to get through that real quick. Tell you how Techolution can provide some value and what we've done in the past, and I'll get to the most interesting thing, and that's the case study. So I got 3 good case studies for you guys to go over. I'd like to keep it interactive, so if anybody has any questions, feel free to jump in and go. I will do my best to talk slow. I do tend to talk fast, so if I do talk too fast, please let me know, and I will try to slow it down. Oh, so there we go. See, I'm already speaking too fast. I will promise I will slow down. So just a little bit about us. So what we really specialize in is GKE, containerization, and application modernization. Our real specialty is there in Kubernetes as well as in Anthos. So we have a lot of skill sets there and really have focused on those technologies with a specific interest in application modernization and cloud native development. So we're really striving to become the world leader in Anthos in Kubernetes. We are really nimble and quick turnaround, as you'll see in one of my case studies. And we basically check all the boxes at GCP. We are a reseller, we're a premier partner. We have our app dev specialization. We can go through PSO, and we have a local presence in Southeast Asia. We have an office in Singapore, an office in Jakarta, and we have a main development center out of India. So that's enough about us. It's just going to give build a little credibility here. So I'm sure you guys all know about the market challenges that everyone faces. I don't really need to go too deep here. The retail market size is somewhere around 5 trillion USD. Brick and mortar stores are closing. Online competition, decline of malls, crowds, high debts from private equity, all kinds of things are driving these stores to close. In the US, GNC, which is a big drugstore, closed 1,200 stores. Stores like GameStop, Bed Bath & Beyond, AT&T, Victoria's Secret, I mean, they've closed hundreds of stores. And we see a big shift to online presence. And not to imagine, we also have a lot of competition from the cloud natives, which are really the challenge. So, when you're looking at how you get to the cloud, or if you're already there, how you fix some of your presence, the first thing you want to think about is really, how long does it take to get from an idea to actual deployment? And if you're thinking months or multiple months, I mean, most of these unicorns, these cloud native devs are doing it in days, hours, and weeks. So they have a huge competitive advantage. The other thing to consider is, can you, handle the load? I mean, big events like 9/9, 10/10, I mean, you get slammed with all this extra traffic. How do you expand out and control and being able to respond to that? So, it can't really be, this is a Google talk, so I think we have to mention the cloud. So obviously the cloud is a very important piece of this. We need to make sure that you have your application in the best state possible. Take advantage of as many cloud native services as you can. And as you probably know, Google has an amazing set of tools that you can use, but using those tools is definitely challenging. The real key to everything is automation and data. So make sure that you automate everything in your process, from your testing to your provisioning of your infrastructure to your releasing, and all this is extremely challenging if you don't know what you're doing. Slide, I'm sure I got it in there. So to do this, I'm sure everybody here has a great set of developers. I'm sure everyone here, leverages the developers to pump out and produce business value to your end customers. And you really don't want your developers spending their time working on, system engineering and figuring things out. Developers typically spend about 1/3 of their time as system engineers, which is extremely frustrating for them, as well as for the stakeholders, because they're not getting the acceleration that they would like out of the cloud journey. So, what we really want to see is your developers focusing on the key business tasks at hand and not trying to go out and figure out some of this interesting and required technology. So, not to scare you here, but this is a sample of a lot of tools that typically creep into a cloud deployment. And to really be successful in the cloud, you really need to be a master at not all these tools, but a high set of these tools. And some of them are you may not be a Java shop, you may be a .NET shop. So there's like substitutes here and there, but just to give you just the plethora of different, types of tools and tools that are out there that need to be mastered in order to have something successful. So how can we help? Well, first, we've done the hard work. We've gone through and we've spent the time and mastered, if not all these tools, but I'd say 90% of them. So we have a good cover of these. We have set up 9 different center of excellences here where we have people highly specialized in these. And we don't know your business. We know e-commerce, but we don't know your specific business. So we want to make sure that you produce value in that business and let us focus on the things that are the same across every cloud deployment. And the way that we really get to the cloud are these 3 main strategies that I have here. So lift and shift, which I'm sure everyone is probably the most aware of. That is migrating as is, picking up your applications in the data center and just deploying them in the cloud. Now, this is typically the easiest route to go. It requires the least amount of cloud knowledge. A lot of the basic data center knowledge is very transferable to this lift and shift model. But at the same time, it's really the most expensive. I mean, if you're going to be running essentially a data center like in the cloud, you're not going to get the best bang out of it. You really want to start leveraging a lot of the managed services and cloud native design that the cloud has to offer to help drive your costs down. The next option here is what I call modernize in place. And this is essentially bringing the cloud to you. And that could be very abstract, whether it brings the cloud to your data center, or brings the cloud maybe to another cloud provider. But it's a great way where you can modernize your applications where they are. So you modernize and it still connects to all your existing applications and frees you the burden of having to go back and doing this giant rip and replace. You can modernize them, deploy them, and then move them to the real cloud when you're ready. Now, this is usually requires some sort of platform, such as Anthos, to accomplish. You need some kind of hybrid layer in there to basically deploy to, and that's kind of the cons. And then the final one, which is probably the one I'm the most proponent of, is what we call the leapfrog. And this is essentially creating a brand new platform. So, you set up this shiny new GKE instance in the cloud, and you get it set up like a cloud native or a unicorn would from the start. And then you just start migrating applications in there. And you don't migrate every application. You really go back to a data-driven approach and find out, which applications are really essential to the business. So, I'm sure if anybody here on the call would ask your business, users, is your application important? And I'm sure every one of your business users would say, yes, my application is very important. But the reality is, when you look at the data, most of these applications really don't have any impact into your actual end goal of selling products. So this is a great approach, but you really have to analyze the data of what applications you're doing in order to make it very successful. So that's enough about us. Let's talk about some of the success stories and big wins that we have here. So I'm sure probably from Vietnam, probably knows Tiki. So Tiki is a major e-commerce seller here. So this was a very interesting project that we worked on. And really shows a lot of the agility that we went through to get this project conceived. So the way that it actually happened was my CEO it was actually out in Singapore at the time, and Google and AWS were fighting over the Tiki contract, and Google had asked us to come in and help sell, GCP to Tiki. And we went in there, and then this was about the mid to end of July. And our target was we were trying to make the 10/10 go live for all the the big traffic days of 10/10. So we were able to go in there. We convinced the CEO by showcasing a lot of the previous e-commerce projects we worked on, as well as a lot of the skills we had, and really just sold him on why GKE and GCP were a far superior product than AWS. And it was great because they gave us an opportunity to work on this project. So by the end of July, we had kicked off the project. And by the middle of August, so about 2 or 3 weeks later, they decided, this is Tiki, that they didn't want to hit 10/10, but they actually wanted to hit 9/9. So, that cut it almost, a month off of our development time and working with them. And we were able to adapt, put more people on the project, and we deployed to production by 9/2. So we made it for the release date. We ended up migrating 140 microservices, 40 VMs, and 20 databases to GCP. And we did this in about 7 weeks' time. So, this is very possible with a very mature team. The result, they were able to handle 10-time order fulfillment with over 4,000 orders transacted per minute, and had a flawless execution on 9/9. So no outages, no problems, no disruption in service. Our biggest challenge on the project was they use Kafka for a lot of their event streaming and order tracking and whatnot. They wanted to make sure while we were, essentially flipping the switch, we didn't lose any order. So we had to basically run 2 clusters at the same time and mirror the topics, and that was the biggest challenge for that project. This was so successful that we actually had an article written in Channel Asia about it. Link is at the bottom if you're interested in reading it. But we were able to work very closely with Tiki and deploy their applications into GKE, and it really was an amazing experience. And I gotta tip my hat to Tiki. They had a bunch of amazing engineers that worked really hard as well. But partnering with them was amazing. The next case study, which I'd like to talk about, is a company here in the US called Mood Fabrics. They have been on TV on a show called Project Runway, and they sell fabric to customers, end users. And what their essential problem is they run Magento, which is an e-commerce platform. I'm not sure if anybody's familiar with it. They were on version 1, and version 1 goes out of support at the end of last June. So last month, it actually officially is no longer supported. And they needed to migrate to version 2, but at the same time, they didn't want to keep it running in AWS. So they were running it as VMs in EC2 instances, and it was really expensive for them. Plus, every time Google spidered their site and searched it because they had so many dynamic pages, their application essentially crashed. So they had all this additional load on top of it. And then in the US, our 9/9 day is Black Friday. On Black Friday, they were unable to respond to the demand of all the requests coming in. So what we did was, while we upgraded them to version 2, at the same time, we also helped them containerize their application and deployed it out to GKE. So this gave them an amazing ability to create an elastic response to anything that comes in. So the auto scaling will automatically spin up new containers on demand and then spin down when they're no longer needed. We even added a tool called Spinnaker, which is a continuous deployment tool. And this allowed them to do some canary testing. So they can actually test a new feature prior to rolling it out to the entire public. So they can segmentation to their new feature, and if it is deemed as meeting their business KPIs, they can roll it out to everyone, and if not, they can always roll it back and go back to the previous version. So this was something that they did not have previously. But we actually helped them as well migrate some of their supply chain and their ERP systems. Now, they were using a homemade ERP system, so it was a little easier to containerize it. but that was definitely a piece of the puzzle. And then the final piece was we worked with some of their user data to help increase their conversion rate. So we increased their conversion rate by over 10% and provided them with an amazing, highly scalable application. So, you know, and I'll add too that we were actually one of the first companies in all of Google to actually get Magento running in GKE. So with a big win, and I hope to leverage some of this technology for other clients in the future. My last success story here, my last case study is Bleebly. And it's kind of funny because Bleebly was something that I used to help convince Tiki. No one can hear your presentation. Sorry. We used Bleebly to help sell Tiki. And it really was almost an identical project to, and instead of going over the same, you know, lessons learned and pieces to it, I want to talk about some of the things that we've learned post-project that I think would be very beneficial for anybody starting their journey into containerization and application modernization. So I thought that was more beneficial than really just repeating the same thing. Number of containers we migrated was very similar. The project size was similar. You know, it's a very similar company too. So I hope you value in that. But so the first thing that we did that was really beneficial is we, you know, practice paired programming here. So we like to be engaged with our stakeholders on the development level to make sure that we are educating them as we go. But it is also important to pair the project manager. So if we didn't, or when we didn't, we found that the teams got out of sync really, really quickly. The most major thing that we learned with everything else was the scripting of the infrastructure. And when you start your cloud journey, the most important thing to do is Terraform or use or some tool to infrastructure as code your infrastructure. So you want to make sure that everything is scripted out. And with this project, we got a lot of resistance from the stakeholders there that they did not want to do this. And it ended up causing a tremendous amount of rework and delay because we had to go back and redo everything once we were able to show them why we wanted to infrastructure as code everything from the start. So, and that kind of goes the next point. You want to make sure your test environment is as close to production as you can. So if it's not, you will run into the problem. And if you have your infrastructure as code from the start, you can easily spin up those infrastructure environments on the fly when you need them. So this saves you a lot of time spinning these up. You want to make sure you treat everything as code. That's important. You know, everything, whether it be the configuration files themselves or the infrastructure scripts, that's all code should be checked into Git. And you want to make sure you document. I mean, that's so important, especially when you start working with larger teams. You know, typically what we saw was that we would work with one team, and then we would move to a new division that handled a new, you know, product or component, and we would have to start over and basically re-educate them every time. And if we had documented more along the way, specifically the client, we would have solved a lot of problems and had a lot of, you know, challenges erased. And then the two last things here, you know, we call the pizza team, basically a team that if you order 2 pizzas, you could split it. So somewhere between 6 to 8 people. You want to make sure your team sizes are relatively small. Anything else, and you could encounter things like 2-hour stand-up, where you're just trying to get status from the team, and it just takes that long to get everyone's status. So you really try to veer away from these as much as possible. And then finally, try to communicate in a standard way. You know, pick a tool and stick to it. So some lessons learned, some things that I think are really important for your cloud journey. Finally, I just want to leave you with some of the other success stories that we've had with a lot of different verticals around the world. You know, as I said, we have an office in Indo, we have an office in Singapore, and an office in the US. So these are some of the major clients we've worked with in a lot of different verticals. So everybody I feel like has a piece of e-commerce in them. I mean, there's a lot of different interactions and transactions and supply chain, and a lot of companies really touch all these aspects. So, and if anybody's got any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them. And if not, I can transition to Tony.